All right, hello and welcome back. This is video number 5, dedicated to general essay writing, and that is Devo, because are we not men? We are Devo. And you may notice that I'm teaching in a baseball cap. I actually did a little poll yesterday and asked a couple of colleagues, can I teach in a baseball cap? And I was told that yes, you can. Yes, you can teach in a baseball cap. Because I'm desperately in need of a haircut. So even though I'm going to do another video, and there are 2 will release today, Monday or Tuesday when I release next week's video, perhaps I will be without a cap. But for now, this just makes me more comfortable. And of course, as you can see, I'm rocking the home team. I grew up in Michigan, so my number 1 is the Detroit Tigers. That's my number 1 of anything, any sport. Because baseball is my religion. So not so much right now though, because we don't have baseball. So let's see, let's dig in, starting with the agenda. And I got it right here. This is where I collect the notes, of course, and you'll get to see this with the assignment itself. This is going to be an assignment. Videos 5 and 6 will be together as one assignment. And so there'll be 2 secret words. And so be watchful for the secret words, put the secret words at the top of your notes, make 1 note document for the whole thing, but 2 secret words, and note which one goes with which video, label the notes for each video, you know, because that's what we do. So I'm going to start out this exciting PowerPoint with, actually I should repeat this down here, you know, because this is how I build, and you know, I put the embedded video links in here, and so I'm going to start with how to say nothing in 500 words, or how to say nothing in 500 words, which is an essay that I asked you to read. And so I'm just going to hit the highlights of it because I want you to read it. But what it really does is a great job on a number of things, thinking about general essay writing. But particularly, I want to point out its justification for not using second-person pronouns in your writing. And then, of course, I have a file posted on why to not use second-person pronouns. And so then kind of work through the standard college essay, kind of look at the classic structure and the different elements here, introductions, body stuff, including topic sentences where we talk about pie format, where you're talking about SIP, we talk about rhetorical triangle a little bit, and then I have a sample. So let's dig into that. And now I can do this efficiently because I had to restart the video because I had not opened the PowerPoint I wanted and couldn't find it. And then I tried to pause the recording and instead just pause the share, which isn't what I wanted to do. So that was not right. So let's just take a look at this. And of course, it's yeah, that's not what I want. There we go. I can do magic. All right, so how to say nothing in 500 words, an essay about essays written by Paul Roberts, rewritten by me. And so it starts you out with a scenario of a typical classic aged college student in a dormitory at a school away from home, which is something we don't have right now, of course, with the pandemic. Kind of takes you through the student's life, in which the student is given an assignment on Friday and has to write an essay by Monday. Again, something we're not doing, although you might feel that way since our rough draft is due Monday, but you knew that it was coming and the assignment's been open since the first day of class. So the student decides to write on abolishing college football. And decides to get, start a right Friday night so you can enjoy the weekend, but doesn't get very far. starts out and kind of stalls out and gets up to about 32 words and figures, oh, hey, I'm going to play some Nintendo and kind of hang out. It is, after all, Friday night. And so then tries to do homework on Saturday, but there's laundry and calculus and, of course, the football game, and then Sunday and church. And so eventually it's Sunday night before the student is trying to write the damn essay. Let's do the next day. So the student, dives in. And of course, what it is an example of a terrible, like all the mistakes you could possibly think of making, this student makes, and so I think it's very instructive, and you definitely should read it. Plus, it's humorous. It was already humorous, and I added humor, so additional humor. So the student sort of flounders around trying to justify why we should abolish college football. It makes up, a bunch of claims. Actually, in many ways, sometimes this essay is better than ones I've received. More claims, then there's shifting point of view, and there's interjections in between as the student is writing, and so we sort of see the process. Has to go out for burgers, and so on. So tries to finish it up, but falls short of the 500 words. So does the classic thing students do, which is make the margins bigger and use a bigger font. Which doesn't work as well in the digital world because we get a word count. So that's lame. And the student gets a D, right? So why? And so then the essay goes into, a variety of the things the student did wrong. And particularly the state, the mental state of the teacher. The teacher, is having trouble. And one of the greatest truths of essay writing, which is that you have to make your subject interesting, because all subjects except sex are dull until someone makes them interesting. And so it's got a lot of material in it like that. And so then it goes through a variety of possible choices and things to think about as you're writing your essay, like avoid the obvious content, take the less usual side, slip out of abstraction, avoid obvious padding, call a fool, straight talk, beware the pat expression, colorful words, colored words, and colorless words, and you could read the rest. And of course, I guess I glossed over the part where it talks about not using second person pronouns. But you can read it, it's in there. It has a really good example about that. But here I'll show you my handout on that. And I got a bunch of things in, I wonder if it doesn't matter where I put this. I'm hoping that's true. I got a bunch of things here in PDF land. So one of the files is avoiding second person and why. And mainly when we talk about second person, we're talking about you. And one of the things I can recommend is that you're writing your essay and you don't want to keep track of all of these things while you're writing. And often people don't. Is just make a list of these things to do in the one revision you'll do before you give it to me. And one of the easiest things you can do is search with the find function, because you have a computer, Y-O-U. And almost there's only one word that has Y-O-U in it other than Y-O-U by itself, which is youth and young. So that'll come up if you have those. Otherwise, you'll find the U's, and you could just rewrite the sentences. I mean, you can't just take them out. You have to rewrite the sentence, but you rewrite the sentence and get those out of there. Because this is a big deal in terms of how we want you to write these essays in an academic setting. And I'm not the only one that thinks it's a big deal. I found out that all my colleagues are driven crazy by this. So it's not, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me that why is my screen sharing paused again? All right. I hope that yeah, I'm pretty sure. All right. I don't know. So I guess when I moved it over, it didn't like that. But I'm sorry, I just noticed that the screen sharing was paused. Sometimes Zoom is problematic. I'll look at the video, see what it was showing you during the time period I was talking, but I'm sure it's fine. So so with that, we can go back to the agenda, and I can kind of work you through the parts of the research paper, or not the research paper, of the composition paper. And I know from experience that this is big enough, probably. Oh, but I can make me bigger, which I've been little so far through most of this. So let me make me bigger, and that'll be a more enjoyable viewing experience. So standard college essay typically contains 5 paragraphs. And these are the introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and the conclusion. We're doing something very similar in our response essay for essay 1. But you could really be viewing this video for any of our essays, and they vary in terms of how many paragraphs we're going to ask you to have. We don't always want you to write the 5-paragraph essay, and that's all I'll say about that right now. So an introduction features a hook, features context. What information does the reader need to understand your subject? And then the thesis. Which is typically the last sentence of the introductory paragraph, which is typically the first paragraph of your essay. Then you have body paragraphs, which set forward your claims and advance your thesis. And you know, so we can say they support the introduction, they develop the thesis, and we want you to keep some things in mind as you're doing that. One is how you structure the paragraph. So we're going to talk about pie format. How you introduce source material if you have it, which you're pretty much always going to have some source material you're working with. So you need to signal the source material, which we call SIP, or signal phrases for SIP. You usually want to address counter arguments or the opposition to whatever you're arguing. And then you conclude with a killer last line. Most teachers like the summary conclusion. You restate your thesis, you have a summary of your points. I like the non-summary conclusion because, you know, if you look at the writing of professional writers, they almost always have a non-summary conclusion. And I actually didn't load it up, but I have a great essay in the course somewhere called Four Types of Courage. And 4 Types of Courage is a really great essay for looking at the structure of essays. In fact, I should have dialed it up here so I can show it to you, you know. So I think I can get it ready. So maybe I'll show you 2 samples because I'm crazy like that. So look at this. I'm doing magic tricks. So I'm loading that up so that we're ready for it. You can't see any of that because I'm sharing this program, but not that. So I just did the magic trick behind the scenes. So let's talk a little bit about introductions. And I actually have a file that supports part of this. So the basic structure of an introduction is a hook, the first sentence or several sentences, context or overview, so understanding of your subject matter, and then a thesis statement. Okay, so let's look at hook. And just because you're, you know, doesn't matter what you're writing about. You should use some kind of a hook to grab the reader's attention. That's pretty standard. So actually, this is also a good time to sneak in the secret word. So let's do that first. Secret word is quidnunc. Now, when I teach face-to-face in the live classroom, I do words of the day. This is the very first word of the day. I don't think I've given it to you yet. I gave it to the other class. Quidnunc is a word that means a person who is interested in everything, which I think is the perfect mindset for a college student. If you're interested in everything, then you can write about anything, you can read about anything, you're excited to learn because you're interested. And I just think this is a great word. It's one of my all-time favorite words. And so it is the secret word for this video, quidnunc. And you can see how it's spelled right there. That's a Q if you can't read the funky font. So now back to my share. if I can find it out of the 8,000 things that are open in my computer. Well, this is frustrating. Did something funky happen and it closed my set of PDFs? Is that possible? No, they're right there. Sorry, you know, technical difficulties. This is always going to happen. Oh, I actually do have a whiteboard in this. That's kind of cool. Oh, there they are. Sorry. All right, now I'm rocking. 4 types of courage, which actually we'll look at after we look at catchy hooks. So catchy hooks. I have a whole file for you. You know, rhetorical questions, riddles, figurative. I'm not so crazy about questions, to be honest. But if you're going to do a question, leading the paper with a question and making it your you know, question to start your essay, and then you're done. Sometimes students do lots and lots of questions, and they don't provide answers. Your job as a writer is to give me answers. So if you find yourself writing more than one question in an essay, you have to ask yourself a question of yourself, which is, why am I writing all these questions? And that is often because you don't have the answers. You got to think of what the answers are. Questions might be good for you to think about what you should write, but then you have to write it. So you get a whole bunch of examples of hooks in here, and I'm particularly fond of the story, or what's here called like an anecdote or a scenario, like an illustration, you know, and so this gives you a variety of examples. 4 types of courage, which is a great essay on writing essays, invokes, you know, Hollywood heroes like Jack Bauer out of the TV show 24 as an example of someone with a lot of courage. So we'll come back to this and look into it more. But you start with some kind of a hook. You got to start with something that grabs the reader's attention, and you try to be creative here, because I'm going to push you in revising to come up with something more interesting. Then context. What do we need to understand your subject matter? And so for, say, something like essay 1, the response, you have an article that you've read, you got to talk about that, you got to name it, you got to name the author, you might even want to give just like a 1-sentence overview of that. And then you deliver your thesis, all right? And so we'll look at this in a little more depth later. We'll look in the samples, but with essay 1, we'll look at it in my breakdown of essay 1. So this goes into more depth on, you know, hook, how do you start, you know, question is lame, as I already said. Startling facts are kind of exciting. Then context, and you think about all the W questions, you know, how many of these do you need to answer so that the reader understands what it is you're talking about? And then the thesis, which is an argument. It's a statement of opinion. It's a claim. It's a thing that you're going to argue, but it also has parts. And we'll look at this again with the samples. But I got some more stuff here on hook. Context, introduction. I got some sample hooks. I'm not going to go over all of this in the video because you can just read, you know, some of this on your own. I thought I had something that spoke more directly to thesis other than that, but I guess not. And so then you have your paragraphs, and your paragraphs advance the thesis. And so I have a variety of things to show you related to that, and then of course the samples. So one file right away that we'll do is this one on topic sentences. And so topic sentences are the first sentence of the paragraph. They're also the thing we call the point. So when we're talking about pie format, for the paragraphs, we're talking about a topic sentence or a point that is your first sentence that tells us what the paragraph is about, but it also connects to the thesis and advances that thesis. And then you have information and explanation as the other parts of the paragraph structure. But this is a really good file that kind of works you through some basics of topic sentences. And at your stage in the compositional journey, you should not really be working with implied topic sentences. You should be working with obvious topic sentences. So this sort of gives you some examples, some good examples, some bad examples, points to remember. You know, it's a very instructive handout. And then if we compare that with something like this, with the 4 types of courage, we see really good structure. This is a really great example to study structure. And if you're going to really learn to be a better writer, you have to spend some time investigating writing and thinking about writing and learning about writing. You can't just do the writing. And this is something that happens all the time in a course like this. And you like, compare it to math. You know, do you dive right in to trying to do one of the math problems before you've gone through the instruction to know how to do it? Or in a science class, do you go into the lab and immediately start to do the lab before you really know what the lab is asking you to do? Same thing here. You know, you need to understand things about writing, and so you have to study writing. And so I give you resources, but I'm not going to, you know, make 5 hours of videos a week, even though I said I make no more than that, because that's the number of class hours we normally have. But you need to investigate. So when I give you an essay like this, look at it and analyze it. You know, like, how does she, Karen Castellucci-Cox, what's her hook? How does she start? Can you find her thesis? So it's going to take a second here to load up the second page. I don't know why it's being fussy. Oh, that's because it's way down here. Can you find her thesis? And one of the elements of a good thesis is a thing that we call the essay map. And it's kind of a preview of topics. And if you look at a really well-written one, it's a preview of topics where the writer has not written, I'm going to write about these topics, which is extremely lame, and we don't want to read that kind of thing. But this is a really good one. Hey, there's 4 types of courage. Here's what they are: physical, social, moral, and creative. And then, you know, examine how she investigates those. What you're going to find is that she devotes 2 paragraphs to each of these types, with the exception of 1. So immediately, instead of just announcing she's got 4 paragraphs coming, she actually has 9 paragraphs coming, because, you know, 2 on physical, 2 on moral, 2 on creative. There you got 6. Okay, I miscounted. And then a 7th on social, and then 2 paragraphs of conclusion. You know, so right away you see she starts talking about physical courage. Physical courage, you know, because physical was the first thing in her essay map. You know, and then this next paragraph is we're still on physical courage, but it's a new idea. It's a new idea, right? And you can really look at, you know, how she's following what we call this pie format, which I'll show you here in a sec, and material I'm sharing with you on that. So she sets up the point or the topic, then she goes into the information, then she follows that up with explanation and or analysis and moves on to the next idea. And that's really the structure that you want. And often, like, if you're going to try to do this all in 1 paragraph, that's because she's got information, explanation, she's got information, explanation, you know. So really advanced writing, and what we try to push you toward in college writing is more than 1 IE for every point, you know. So you might have a point, and then you might have IE, 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 as you have more information and more explanation. So let's look at the resources for that. So I got that here. There we go. So giving you this link that gives you pie format. It also gives you SIP and rhetorical situations. So I kind of talk about these, and we'll look at another sample, and then that's the end of this particular video. Of course, I had to put in some fun things about how I love pie. And this is a great graphic for my love of pie, demonstrated in a graph. You know, things that aren't pie, things that are pie. You know, it's funny. So this is stuff by my good friend and colleague Amber Lemire, who breaks down the paragraph structure and explains what I'm talking about. So you got a point or a topic sentence. you deliver information, and then you deliver explanation. And she's done a really good job, just very basic description of these things. But then, as I was just talking about, sometimes for more complex work, you have pi plus IE plus IE plus IE, and so on, right? So you have more iterations of that structure, okay? So at the top of this, you also have the links to signal phrases and rhetorical situations. So we got signal phrases over here that are just telling you how you set up your source material, right? So, you know, the most common one, of course, is, you know, according to so-and-so, blah, 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 you know. But what we want to see is we want to see you vary your signal phrasing. And so here is a variety of different ways to introduce source material so that you're not saying according to over and over again, because that is extremely lame and repetitive. And we don't want to be lame and repetitive. We want to be neither lame nor repetitive. And so this gives you some advice on putting information in, citing, and you know, some other basic little things. So this is definitely worth looking at. It's something we're going to harp on. We're going to harp on these things all semester. But then we have the rhetorical situation as well. And it actually starts out by getting you to think about your purpose, the author, the medium that you're using, and then ultimately your audience. And I'm looking to see where she put audience. Is it down here? It's somewhere. Right here. There we go. I knew it was on this page somewhere. And this is something we'll spend more time on, but this is a thing from Plato, and this logo or this graphic makes a joke about logos and logos. For the different types of writing appeals that you would use in your writing, things to think about as you're putting your writing together. So any good piece of writing is going to have some pathos. You're going to appeal to the reader's emotions. And so you got to be very purposeful about this. And look at samples of writing that we share with you, like the Devin Price article, Laziness Does Not Exist, and, you know, what are the emotional appeals in there? And then what kind of emotional appeals will you use to be persuasive in what you're writing? You always appeal to the reader's sense of logic, you know, so you have to have logical reasoning. You have to have thought through what it is you want to argue, and that it makes sense, and that it's reasonable, and because good reasons persuade. And so if you have smart reasons and logic, this is going to persuade readers. And then you have to come off trustworthy and credible. You have to also use trustworthy and credible materials, because untrustworthy or materials lacking in credibility will damage your own credibility. But you have to write in a way that establishes trust with your audience. So if you're writing completely off the hook, and super inflammatory and hostile, then you're probably going to fail this, and so then you're not going to persuade. And so these are things that we'll really think about harder in our last two essays of the semester, but they're definitely things to think about at this stage. And so let me conclude this video with one more sample, and I have it in a Word doc, which I have 8,000 things open here, so I have to find the Word doc. And so what I have here is an essay from another school from about 4 years ago, where the students had to just write a really basic essay. And so I thought it would be good to teach basic essay concepts, in which they argued for what qualities someone needs to be good at a certain thing. So there were like being a good parent, being a good leader, or being a good public servant. And so this student chose a nurse. And since many of you want to be nurses or something similar in the health field, I thought that you might relate to this. So let's take a look. And I'll be sharing this in the classroom. I don't think I have it in there quite yet. So this has a good hook, you know. The patient arrives to the doctor's office in acute pain, and it kind of tells a little story about a patient, right? And then we get the context. You know, we're gonna learn about what makes a good nurse, and then we get the thesis. And this is a really good thesis that presents an argument, but it also sets up the topics, sets up what we call the essay map. So I will actually read along with this. In fact, I probably need to make this bigger. I've encountered this before. So let me zoom this up a little bit so that it's bigger. And see if we'll go there. There we go. So because of the competitive nature of the healthcare industry for high quality care and the ease with which a person can change from insurance to insurance, a nurse needs to have good qualities of being knowledgeable in his or her specific field, an advocate for the patient, and the compassion for all those in his or her care. And you'll notice I made a couple of edits here because there were some flaws in what the student wrote. So there are problems, right? So, you know, the healthcare industry is competitive. There's a struggle for high quality care. Insurances vary. And so then the student's arguing that the nurse needs to be knowledgeable, needs to be an advocate, needs to have compassion. So let's see how she advances this thesis. So we start right out with knowledge. We should always be able to see a connection between a topic named in the thesis and a word or concept described in the topic sentence. And sometimes it's the same word. It's a key word, you know, knowledgeable, knowledge, you know, and so we know we're on track. We understand what's happening here. And so she sets up the point, and then she, you know, provides information and reasoning and explanation. And this is a paper that doesn't rely so much on sources, so it's not necessarily source material. She is a nurse, so she was using her personal experience, and that's fine. That's information. It's just not, you know, information doesn't have to always be source material. But then, you know, advocate was the next thing. And you want to try to write these topics in a little different form than the second quality of a good nurse is being a patient advocate. It's not as good. Whereas this one was better, right? You know, knowledge is the continual quest of any nurse. That's a little better. Because these also have to be claims. This is sort of a claim, but it's lame, you know? And so then she looked to see if she has information and explanation. She has examples, and you want your examples to be as specific as possible, even if you have to invent people and fictional situations. That's totally fine. And then compassion. And again, does she iterate over information, explanation, and then a conclusion, right? You know, how does she do that? Does she restate and summarize? Does she have another idea that doesn't necessarily need more explanation than this and can end strong? And so I thought it was a pretty good example of what it is and a good essay should do. So that is the scope of what I wanted to do in this particular video. And I wanted to just give you the basics of essay writing and get you to think about not only the different parts that you need to be mindful of as you're assembling your own essay, but the fact that you need to study essay writing at the same time as you're writing an essay. I mean, sure, you learn by doing, right? And you'll get feedback from me, and eventually we'll do some peer review, so you'll get feedback from others as well. And that will be a learning experience. But part of this, and I haven't actually delivered this lecture yet on the 4 elements of this course, one of which is exposure to writing and thinking about writing. So not only looking at samples, but studying things that describe, you know, like the topic sentence file. right? So, so dig in. There's a lot of resources in the classroom already on thesis and other things that I haven't even pointed out in this video, and I'll be pointing out in future videos. So dig into this stuff. The next video is going to specifically talk about essay 1 and writing that. And so thanks for tuning in. See you around the classroom. Bye-bye.